Here we go, guys. I hope you are doing okay. I hope you are doing fine. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. And if you like the content, if you like the analysis, be sure to click the bell icon for further updates. Now let's talk about today's case. When UnitedHealthcare posted its official condolence message about the death of CEO Brian Thompson on social media, something happened that nobody at corporate headquarters expected. Over 100,000 Facebook users responded to the post with smileys and laughing emojis. On LinkedIn, the company had to disable comments entirely because thousands upon thousands of people were posting cry and laughing faces as the responses. That's not normal reaction to a man being shot dead on a public sidewalk, and yet the internet wasn't confused about the feelings. NBC News reported that the main theme animating the post was that UnitedHealthcare and other insurance companies harm and kill Americans by denying their coverage in the name of profit. One physician told the Daily Beast he believed that the perpetrator should face justice, but he also couldn't ignore that Thompson's company had done far more harm to the society. He described the suffering caused as being on the order of millions. The jokes poured in. One of the most popular ones went something like, "Prior authorization is required for thoughts and prayers." The unidentified shooter was being called a folk hero, celebrated as a vigilante, before anyone even knew his name. That name, as the world would learn 5 days later, was Luigi Mangione, and the story of how a 26-year-old Ivy League graduate wound up sitting in shackles in Manhattan courtroom, facing both state and federal murder charges, is not just a story about one man or one killing. It's a story about a healthcare system that drove millions of Americans to a point where a large chunk of them looked at a public assassination and felt a relief, maybe even satisfaction. That's deeply uncomfortable reality, and this case is going to force a jury and a country to sit with it. Brian Thompson is a 50 years old CEO of UnitedHealthcare, was shot and killed outside the New York Hilton Midtown Hotel on morning of December 4, 2024. He was walking to the hotel for United Health Group's annual investor conference when surveillance video showed a masked gunman shooting him from behind. The whole thing was caught on closed-circuit cameras, a figure in dark jacket, face covered, moving with a kind of eerie and calm. He walked up behind Thompson, raised a handgun and fired. Then he walked away. Not running, not panicking, just simply walked away. Police found 3 shell casings at the scene with words scratched into them. The words were delay, deny, and depose. Those words mimic a phrase used to describe how insurance companies avoid paying claims. That detail alone sent the internet spiraling. Investigators traced the shooter's movements to a hostel in Upper Manhattan where he had registered using name and identification of Mark Rosario. They also found evidence he had taken a train to Philadelphia after the murder. The discarded backpack, a water bottle tossed in a trash can, a dropped cell phone. Now the trace of evidence started to form, and a worldwide manhunt kicked into a gear. For 5 days, the identity of the shooter was unknown. And in that vacuum, something remarkable happened. Instead of a country unified in horror, America split wide open. Thompson's death received widespread attention and led to polarized reactions. Several public officials expressed dismay and offered condolences, while many used the event to call attention to the practices of the U.S. health and insurance industry. But social media told a different story than the official statements. Reactions to the killing included widespread contempt and mockery towards Thompson's and United Health Group, sympathy and praise for the shooter, and broader criticism of the American healthcare system, primarily regarding claim denial practices. The shooting unleashed a wave of public feeling, frustration, anger, resentment, helplessness from Americans sharing personal stories of interactions with the insurance companies. The words on the ammunition, delay, deny, and depose, amplified voices that had been critical of the industry. A man named Tim Anderson spoke to the PBS about how his wife Mary had to deal with United Healthcare coverage denials before she died on Lou Gehrig disease in 2022. He described how they couldn't get coverage for machines to help his wife breathe or talk. Towards the end, she communicated by blinking when he showed her pictures. He said he couldn't condone killing people, but his first reaction was, "Yeah, I wonder if somebody had a spouse whose coverage was denied." A Portland ophthalmologist with a large social media following summed it up bluntly. "It's zero sympathy," he said, and the lesson to take away from that is not let's shame people for celebrating a murder. No, it's look at the amount of anger that people have towards this system that's taken advantage of people and do something to try to fix that. And here's the thing, the frustration wasn't coming from some fringe corner of the internet. Opinion polls showed that while majority of American adults found the killing unacceptable, a plurality of younger respondents viewed it as acceptable, and a majority of Americans believed that denials of healthcare coverage and profits made by health insurance companies contributed to the CEO's death. That staggering finding, the majority of the country, drew a direct line between insurance company behavior and why this man was shot. To understand why the reaction was so explosive, you have to understand what UnitedHealthcare actually does and what it was doing under Brian Thompson's leadership. UnitedHealthcare is one of the biggest health insurers in the country, providing coverage to more than 49 million Americans. The company dismissed about 1 in every 3 claims in 2023, the most of any major insurer. That's twice the industry average of 16%, according to data from Value Penguin. Read that again. 1 in 3 claims denied. If your doctor says you need something, there is roughly a 1 in 3 shot that UnitedHealthcare tells you, no, you will not be able to get that. Under Thompson's leadership, profits for UnitedHealthcare surged from $12 billion in 2021 to more than $16 billion in 2023. Thompson received an annual compensation package in 2023 valued at $10.2 million, and those denial numbers weren't staying flat. They were climbing. A U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations report found that UnitedHealthcare's prior authorization denial rate for post-acute care services needed after hospitalization jumped from 10.9% in 2020 to 22.7% in 2022. The number of denial claims in 2022 was 9 times higher compared to 2019. The mechanism behind that increase matters. During this same period, the company implemented multiple initiatives to automate the denial process using AI and machine learning. But in November 2023, UnitedHealthcare was hit with a class action lawsuit accusing it and its secondary, NaviHealth, of relying on a computer algorithm to systematically deny claims of Medicare beneficiaries in nursing homes. So the company wasn't just denying more claims, it was building technology specifically designed to deny claims faster and predict which denials would be challenged and which ones patients would just give up on. States like California, Massachusetts, and New York deemed some of these practices illegal. A Senate report revealed that numerous insurers failed to cover the cost of care for older people who fell or had strokes. UnitedHealthcare in particular denied coverage for post-acute care, and their denial rate for those services went from 8.7% in 2019 to 22.7% in 2022. Thompson's wife, Paulette, told NBC News after the killings that her husband had received threats. She said that, basically, I don't know a lack of coverage. I just know that he said there were some people that had been threatening him. He didn't have a security detail. Since the killing, the company's stock fell from $610 a share to $308 a share. The company faced multiple lawsuits and investigations, had a decrease in profits, and in May, UnitedHealth Group CEO Andrew Whitty abruptly resigned. 5 days after the shooting, on December 9, 2024, the manhunt ended at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. The 911 call came from McDonald's manager who told dispatchers that customers believed a man inside the restaurant resembled the suspect wanted in the killing. She described him as wearing a black hooded jacket with his hat pulled low, carrying a pharmacy bag while seated near the bathroom. Multiple customers thought he looked like the CEO shooter from the New York. When officers arrived, they asked him to pull down his face mask and for his name. He said it was Mark Rosario and gave the officer a New Jersey ID card bearing the same name. That was the same alias used at the hostel in Manhattan. Authorities searched his backpack and what they found was damning. A red notebook with handwritten notes, a 9mm gun without a serial number, ammunition, a homemade suppressor, US and foreign currencies, identification papers, a laptop, storage devices, and other personal belongings. The received gun was consistent with the firearm used to kill Thompson, According to federal authorities, some of the handwritten entries in the notebook expressed hostility towards the healthcare insurance industry and wealthy executives in particular. In the notebook, he allegedly described his intent to whack a health insurance executive, and there was more than just writings. Prosecutors presented evidence, photos showing a pocket knife with zip ties, a USB necklace, a Greyhound bus pass under fake name, and the clothing he wore at the time of his arrest. The images also showed survival-related items, including a to-do list referencing a kit, map of Altoona, cash, and bus tickets. Prosecutors asked officers whether the police department had planted any cash on Mangione, who claimed he only had about $100 on his person, but Altoona police had documented over $7,000. The suspect was Luigi Nicholas Mangione, born in Towson, Maryland on May 6, 1998, to a Baltimore area couple of Italian descent. His parental grandfather, Nicholas Mangione, was a successful Baltimore businessman with 10 children and 37 grandchildren, one of whom, Nino Mangione, served as a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. This was not a loner from margins. Mangione attended Gilman School, an all-boys private secondary school in Baltimore, where he participated in soccer, track, cross-country, and wrestling. He was his high school valedictorian. His undergraduate studies at the University of Pennsylvania included a minor in mathematics, and his graduate work concentrated on artificial intelligence. In 2016, he founded Upgrade, the university's first game development club. He completed a robotics research internship at the Whiting School of Engineering at Johns Hopkins University and worked as a user interface programming intern with Firaxis Games, where he contributed to the video game Civilization number 6. He was bright, he was social, he was by all accounts passionate. A friend from his time living in Hawaii described him as such a thoughtful and deeply compassionate person at everything he did. So what the hell happened? That's the question. Mangione had discussed getting Lyme disease at age 13 and wrote that he had been experiencing brain fog since high school. He had also sought advice online regarding ill-tempered bowel syndrome and visual snow. While at the University of Pennsylvania, he wrote that he had considered dropping out due to worsening health issues but decided against it, writing that staying in the college let him maintain some semblance of normality. But here comes the back pain, like most of us are having to face this shit problem. But the back pain now is what seems to reshape his world. Mangione supposedly suffered from severe back pain caused by a condition called spondylolisthesis. I know I can't pronounce it correctly. It is a very difficult word. This symptom occurs when vertebrae of the spine slip out of place, compressing nerves and causing acute or chronic pain, affecting between 4% and 8% of U.S. population. After graduation, Mangione moved to Hawaii and resided at Surf Break, co-living space in Honolulu from January to June of 2022. While he was living there, his back pain worsened due to surfing mishap. The pain affected his personal life, and according to the founder of Surf Break, Mangione expressed growing concerns. He was worried about how it could affect romantic relationships, and he knew that being physically intimate with his back condition wasn't possible. Despite the impact on his life, Mangione rarely complained about the condition. The Surf Break founder said it was hurting, but he had never complained about it and never really brought it up, which is, very honorable, at least in my esteem. Archives Reddit post shed light on Mangione's interest and mental state over his last several years. He appears to be active on the platform since 2016 under the username Mr. Cactus, posting most frequently about spine health, travel, and gaming. He underwent spinal fusion surgery in July of 2023 and revealed the procedure online with positive results. On Reddit in February 2024, he referred to having had surgery of the condition 6 months prior and said that within 7 days of the fusion, he was on zero pain meds. Here's where the timeline gets unsettling. After the fusion surgery, Mangione posted on Reddit that it had been the right decision. but it was also after this surgical intervention that he gradually cut off communications with friends and family, becoming isolated in the months leading up to Thompson's killing. The founder of Surf Break said that in summer of 2024, Mangione went radio silent. Crickets. His last text to Mangione before seeing him on the news were, "Where in the world are you, man?" His condition coincided with a period in which he stopped contacting some family and friends. A message posted to him on X on October 30th, reportedly from a friend, read, "Hey, are you okay? Nobody has heard from you in months, and apparently your family is looking for you." A little over a month later, Thompson was dead. An account linked to Mangione on the books review site Goodreads had on its own read list books about chronic back pain and dieting, as well as industrial society and its future. The so-called Unabomber manifesto written by domestic terrorist Ted Kaczynski. There were red flags, such as his admiring review of Kaczynski manifesto. Reading the Kaczynski manifesto was first suggested as a joke in a book club at Surf Break, and it ultimately led to the book club disbanding because of the material, but Mangione seemingly read it. A British freelance writer named Gurvinder Bhogal said he had corresponded with Mangione from April to June of 2024, and he said that we briefly touched on the differences between UK and US healthcare systems, and Luigi complained about how expensive healthcare system in US was and expressed envy at the UK nationalized healthcare system. Mangione never mentioned being covered by or angry with the UnitedHealthcare specifically in any of his social media posts, but doctors who treat the disease of his back pain note that many insurers require patients to undergo 6 to 12 weeks of physical therapy before covering surgery or even imaging. And for someone with severe back pain, physical therapy can be painful and won't be necessary help. Police have stated that UnitedHealthcare did not insure Mangione. His alleged writings, though, went beyond personal grievance. The handwritten manifesto found at the time of his arrest mentioned UnitedHealthcare and accused health insurance companies of abusing our country for immense profit. He specifically said that. Now here comes the controversy behind the arrest of Luigi Mangione. The arrest itself became one of the most contested legal battlegrounds in the case. At the center of suppression hearings was a dispute over whether police violated Mangione's Miranda rights. Defense attorneys said officers questioned him for nearly 20 minutes inside McDonald's before advising him of his right to remain silent. Body camera footage played in court showed officers pressing Mangione about his identity and the contents of his backpack before formally reading the warnings. Prosecutors countered that the questioning was routine and that the advertisement was properly given once he was under arrest, and the backpack search raised its own issues. Body camera footage showed officers involved in the arrest arguing over the necessity of a warrant of search in Mangione's bag. During the state suppression hearings, Altoona officers testified that there was debate over whether they needed a search warrant. One police officer stated that they probably needed a warrant, while other officers countered that they did not because they were conducting a search incident to arrest. Two officers urged they get a warrant given the severity of the case, with another saying, "We don't need one." Department policy stated that when a person is arrested, police can search bags they are in possession of. The bag was brought to the station for a more thorough search, where officers discovered a pistol and a silencer for the first time. Mangione's defense argued that his statements made at McDonald's and up until his arrest to New York, which occurred 10 days later, should be excluded from trial. They argued police started questioning him without first reading his Miranda rights. Prosecutors argued that his rights were read at the correct time, so his statements should stand. Pre-trial suppression hearings are common in criminal cases and generally take a single morning, maybe a full day. 2 days is unusually long. By contrast, Mangione's suppression hearing pushed into its third week with over a dozen witnesses testifying. Mangione's attorney, Karen Agnifilo, objected to the district attorney's release of the video of the shooting, arguing that the DA was plainly trying to sue the case in the court of public public opinion and distract from the fact what she called botched search and arrest. The defense also went after the theatrics surrounding the arrest. During Mangione's New York court hearing on December 23, 2024, his defense attorney called the perp walk the biggest stage perp walk I've ever seen in my career and criticized it as unnecessary and utterly political. Mangione's lawyers contended that authorities biased his case by turning the arrest into a Marvel movie spectacle and by publicly declaring their desire to see him executed even before he was formally indicted. The legal architecture of this case is tangled across 3 separate jurisdictions. Mangione was indicted on 11 state charges and 4 federal charges, including first-degree murder in continuance of terrorism, criminal possession of weapon, and stalking. In New York State, the prosecution initially swung big, going for terrorism-related murder charges. But on September 16, 2025, Judge Gregory Caro dismissed the 2 terrorism charges, ruling that prosecutors presented no evidence to meet the legal threshold for acts intended to intimidate or force the public. That was a significant win for the defense. The remaining state charges, including the second-degree murder, carry the possibility of life in prison. Though New York does not have death penalty after its capital punishment statute was declared unconstitutional in 2004, the federal case carried the real threat. Federal prosecutors initially sought the death penalty. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced she was directing prosecutors to seek the death penalty, declaring the capital punishment was warranted for a premeditated, cold-blooded assassination that shocked America. Mangione's lawyers argued that Bondi's announcement, which she followed with Instagram posts and a TV appearance, showed the decision was based on politics, not merit. They said her remarks tainted the grand jury process that resulted in his indictment. The defense team's statement was blistering. By seeking to murder Luigi Mangione, the Justice Department has moved from dysfunctional to barbaric. Their decision to execute Luigi is political and goes against recommendation of the local federal prosecutors, the law, and historical precedent. While claiming to protect against murder, the federal government moves to commit the premeditated, state-sponsored murder of Luigi. By doing this, they are defending the broken, immoral, and murderous healthcare industry that continues to terrorize the American people. But then came January 30, 2026. U.S. District Judge Margaret Garnett dismissed the death-eligible murder through the use of a firearm and a firearm offense, stating that they were legally mismatched with the 2 stalking charges. Garnett based her decision on an interpretation of the law which requires that the killing being committed during another crime of violence. She found that the alleged stalking of Thompson did not meet that standard. Mangione no longer faces the death penalty. On February 27, 2026, the Department of Justice announced it would not appeal Judge Garnett's ruling. It filed a letter in federal court confirming the decision. That sealed it. The death penalty is officially off the table. The ruling galvanized Mangione's many supporters, who see him as an avatar for his resentment and anger towards the American healthcare system. But here's the catch. Death penalty or not, the remaining charges are no joke. In federal case, Mangione faces 2 counts of stalking, which carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the state side, he faces 1 count of second-degree murder, 7 counts of various weapons charges, and 1 count of second-degree criminal possession of forced device. Both trials hinge on what was found in that backpack, and whether a jury ever gets to see it depends on whether judges rule the search was lawful. In the federal case, Judge Garnett ruled that evidence seized from Mangione's backpack at the time of his arrest can be used at trial. Mangione's attorneys had argued that the search was illegal because police had not yet obtained a warrant and there was no immediate threat. Federal prosecutors argued officials had a right to go through his possessions as part of routine arrest procedures and said that the evidence would have inevitably been discovered legally anyway. The state case is a different matter. Judge Caro stated that he expects to rule on the admissibility of the evidence on May 18, 2026. That ruling could reshape the state trial significantly, since the evidence in question is among the prosecution's most important judgment. The outcome of that ruling may determine whether prosecutors can proceed with their intended strategy or whether they'll be forced to completely reevaluate. If the backpack is suppressed, key evidence like the 9mm pistol, loaded magazine, suppressor, the manifesto, or red notebook, and handwritten notes would all be barred from the trial. Without the gun, the physical link to the shooting gets much thinner. Without the notebook, the prosecution loses the most powerful window into the alleged motive. Those are devastating losses for any case. Then there is another layer to this mess. The Mangione himself spoke up about it in court. As the court concluded in February, Mangione, wearing tan prison clothing and handcuffed, had an outburst, shouting, "It's the same trial twice. 1 + 1 is 2. Double jeopardy by any common sense definition." He's right that it feels unusual. Being tried for the same alleged act in both state and federal court is technically legal under what's known as the separate souvenirs policy. The state and federal governments are considered separate entities, so each can prosecute independently, but it's unusual to see it play out this aggressively. Defense attorney Karen Friedman addressed it directly. Double jeopardy is meant to protect people, and they are using it as a weapon here, so it's unfair. Mangione's defense team has argued that their client is being put in an untenable situation as the tug of war between state and federal prosecutions plays out. Judge Caro tentatively scheduled the state trial to begin on June 8, 2026. The defense team objected, saying they will not be ready on June 8, while prosecutors urged the state trial to proceed first before the federal one to avoid statutory double jeopardy issues. Meanwhile, in federal case, jury questionnaires are scheduled to be given out to hundreds of potential jurors on June 29, 2026. In person, preliminary discussion is scheduled for September 8, with opening statements starting on October 13. Judge Gardner's announcement clarified that preliminary discussion might not take as long as some expected, even given potential concerns over jury nullification and stealth jurors. That's a telling acknowledgement. The court is already thinking about the possibility that sympathetic jurors could try to infiltrate the panel and acquit regardless of evidence. Mangione is represented in New York by Karen Friedman, Mark Agnifilo, and Jacob Kaplan. Learned counsel Avi Moskowitz has been appointed on the federal case. In Pennsylvania, he is represented by Thomas Dickey. It's a full legal army spread across 3 fronts. This case has transcended the courtroom in ways no one predicted. Public displays of sport appeared in form of street art, graffiti, and signs across locations included billboard in Riverside County, California, and a mural in Seattle. Fellow inmates at SCI Huntingdon in Pennsylvania were heard shouting "Free Luigi" from their cells during a live broadcast interview. When Mangione appeared on a January 2026 hearing, the first member of the public lined up outside the courthouse as early as 7 a.m. the previous day. Outside, death penalty opponents gathered holding signs regarding "No death for Luigi Mangione." At his February hearing, approximately 24 supporters packed the courtroom. One wore a shirt reading "Luigi Mangione not in the Epstein files." At his federal courthouse appearances, dozens of supporters showed up wearing green clothing and carrying signs that said "Free Luigi" and "No death for Luigi Mangione." Memes in support of Mangione circulated widely on social media, many of which compared his perp walk to arrest of Jesus, perp walk scenes from Superman movies and Renaissance paintings. He has been noted for his perceived physical attractiveness and has been described in Times magazine as somewhat of an online sexual symbol. In February 2025, Mangione thanked the public in his first official statement since his arrest. He wrote that the support has transcended political, racial, and even class divisions. Charlie Warzel of The Atlantic wrote that to some, Mangione is an expression of the depth of the righteous anger present in American life right now, a symbol of justified violence. Donors of his defense fund have cited that the politicization of the case, the death penalty, due process concerns, and frustrations with the healthcare systems are the reasons. His attorney told Newsweek that Mangione is aware of the fund and very much appreciates the outpouring of support, plans on utilizing it to fight all three of unprecedented cases against him. His legal team launched a dedicated website due to the extraordinary volume of inquiries. Even the cultural industries got involved. Slovenian brand Laibach has named a song named Luigi Mangione on their upcoming album, scheduled for release on May 1, 2026. But the support isn't universal. According to polls, a large portion of Americans hold negative reviews of Mangione, while a minority view him favorably. The Center for Internet Security released a threat assessment bulletin warning that online support for the alleged shooter risks encouraging copycat attacks. CIS analysts stated that overwhelming bipartisan support for the attack on social media had resulted in narrative encouraging violent activities directed at other healthcare executive teams. Elevance Health reversed a controversial policy limiting anesthesia coverage amid the influx of threatening statements following Thompson's killing. CIS wrote that threats were likely to extend to executives in other corporate sectors the public perceives as working against the interest of American people. 2 months after the shooting, UnitedHealth hired a defamation law firm to take action against social media posts critical of the company. Prosecutors alleged that the killing had scared 40 UHC executives into hiring bodyguards. UnitedHealthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and CVS Health, which operates Aetna, all removed photographs and other identifying information about executives from their public-facing materials. The shooting did not just rattle social media, it rattled the boardroom. 2 days after Thompson was gunned down, UnitedHealth Group CEO Andrew Whitty spoke to employees in a video message that later leaked, pushing back against what he called vitriolic media and commentary aimed at company. Whitty justified the insurers' denial practices and claimed few people in U.S. history had a bigger positive effect on American healthcare than Thompson. That video backfired quickly. It fanned the flames in online communities where people took issue with the CEO's comments and continued to criticize UnitedHealthcare and insurers in general. UnitedHealth Group hired Claire Lockheed, the Virginia-based defamation firm that previously represented Dominion Voting Systems in its $787.5 million settlement with Fox News. They went after critics like Dr. Elizabeth Porter, an Austin plastic surgeon who had posted critical content. Porter's legal counsel responded that there was nothing inaccurate in that video and that Dr. Porter will not be silenced by UnitedHealthcare's attempts to threaten and harass her. UnitedHealthcare also took measures to prevent the distribution of internal data about its claim denials. The company submitted a letter to the SEC asking for approval to block a shareholder proposal calling for third-party analysis of its denial practices. A shareholder lawsuit filed in May focused on the company's new projections for 2025, which forecast a significant cut in earnings. Analysts attributed the stock value drop in part to the company pulling back on prior authorizations. In other words, denying care to patients less often was cutting into their profits. That's the kind of detail that crystallized the entire argument being made by Mangione's supporters. When companies' stock drops because it's approving more claims, the incentive structure is laid bare. The business model depends, at least in part, on saying no to sick people. So as of right now, this is where it stands out. In the state case, Judge Caro expected to rule on the admissibility of backpack evidence on May 18, 2026. The state trial is tentatively set for June 8. That trial date may shift if the federal government's calendar creates conflicts. If the federal trial is delayed, the state trial would proceed on September 8. In federal case, jury questionnaires go out on June 29. The preliminary discussion will begin on September 8 and opening statements are targeted on October 13, 2026. Mangione remains in custody at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn as he awaits trial. The defense is preparing for a war on every front. Karen Friedman said, "We are prepared and have been prepared to fight this case, and we will look forward to fighting this case." And the question of jury nullification hangs over everything. In normal cases, this is a fringe concern, but this isn't a normal case. There are people in this country, not an insignificant number, who believe that what Mangione allegedly did was justified, not just understandable, justified. Picking a jury that hasn't been influenced by that wave of public sentiment is going to be one of the hardest things any court has done in years. The real question is what this case says about America. about what happens when an industry that controls whether people live or die, whether your kid gets the surgery they needed, whether your mother gets her medication covered, whether a 26-year-old with a broken spine can get a doctor to take him seriously, when that industry optimizes for profit above all else, builds AI to deny claim faster, and then hands its CEO a $10 million paycheck. The murder of Brian Thompson and the public's reaction to it shows that frustration with corporations has reached a fever pitch. We seem to have moved from the world of "I don't trust you" to "I hate you." One back pain patient, reflecting on the case, put it this way: "I don't think this story is about Mangione at all, really, and I don't think this is about the CEO either. I think it's about a revolution of people who are constantly suffering at the hands of greedy insurance companies. A man is dead, another man is sitting in a cell in Brooklyn, and a country is watching, split between horror at what was done and recognition of why it was done. The trial will determine Luigi's fate, but no jury verdict is going to answer the bigger question: how did America get to a place where millions of its citizens looked at a public assassination and felt like a system finally got what was coming to it? That question doesn't have a sentencing guideline, and it's not going away when the verdict comes in." That is all for today's video. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye and good night.